You are at the zero point of the Russian border. This is the Sumy region. Watch out for the bullets flying across the screen. What you are seeing is not an ordinary moment of conflict. This is what modern warfare calls fly swatting, but in terms of its results, it is a surgical intervention that saves millions of dollars worth of armored units. The Ukrainian border guard is currently targeting that deadly technology, which is fiber optic cable managed and immune to signal jammers. 1 Gerbera, 1 Molnia, and exactly 18 FPV attack drones. All in the air, all active, and all turning into piles of metal within seconds. Burn this image into your mind, because this small tactical victory you are witnessing here is actually the groundwork for a much larger, much more destructive series. And it is merely the signal flare of a massive operation that shattered the backbone of Russian logistics in a single night. So, with Ukraine having achieved such lethal precision, what is the situation on the other side? The Russians' response to this technological superiority is nothing more than tragicomic helplessness. Look at the methods used by the structure claimed to be the world's second largest army on the other side of the front to protect itself from unmanned aerial vehicles. Cages made from scrap metal, rusty propellers mounted on vehicles, and hoped to spin in the wind, even infantrymen trying to hit drones with wooden sticks. These images may look like they came straight out of a Mad Max movie, but this is not Hollywood. This is helplessness in its purest form. Russian soldiers are resorting to medieval methods to stop the silent destruction coming from the sky. However, wooden sticks and rusty cages were not enough to stop the disaster that occurred on the night of February 9th. Here we come to the turning point when the course of the war changed. February 9th, 2026, a date that will go down in history books as the Black Monday of Russian military logistics. After months of intelligence work and satellite analysis, the Ukrainian armed forces pressed the button. The target was neither a tank battalion nor a trench line. The main target was the heart of Russia's future offensive capability, Rostov-na-Don. Ukraine's deep strike capability penetrated deep into Russia, into areas with the densest air defense systems. The massive unmanned aerial vehicle storage facility near Rostov-on-Don was shaken by successive explosions in the darkness of the night. According to General Staff data and field reports, exactly 6,000 first-person view drones were destroyed in this attack. To understand the magnitude of this number, let's do some simple math. Assuming that an average FPV drone has a 30% hit rate, the 6,000 drones destroyed that night potentially meant the survival of 1,800 armored vehicles, shelters, or military personnel on the Ukrainian front. This is not an attack. This is a silent destruction. The 3 main containers at the storage facility completely vaporized. A chain reaction of the lithium batteries and high explosives inside wiped the facility off the map. However, the destruction was not limited to Rostov. Simultaneously, near Sudza in the Kursk region, a critical command center belonging to Russian airborne troops was also razed to the ground by a precision strike. Communication was cut off, and the command echelon was plunged into darkness. In the south, ammunition depots were blown up in the Novoleksivka area of the occupied Kherson region. At this point, it is necessary to pause and reflect. If 6,000 military assets can be wiped out overnight in a strategic depth like Rostov, within the territory of the Russian Federation, then the concept of the front line has lost its meaning. Moscow, St. Petersburg, or beyond the Urals, there are no longer any safe zones. Ukraine's long-range drones are erasing geographical boundaries. So, how did this infiltration occur while Russian air defense systems, S-400s, and Pantsers were scanning the skies? Western military analysts and reports obtained by TGN indicate that the use of autonomous navigation and AI-supported swarm algorithms in this attack is highly probable. These drones may not be piloted by a human. We are talking about flying robots that chart their own courses, detect threats and evade them, and lock onto targets. Ukraine is transforming this technological superiority into terrifying hunters, not only in strategic bombardments, but also on the front lines. Now let's look at that silent assassin descending from the sky and hiding in the trees, the most insidious face of the new generation of warfare. The most terrifying sound on the battlefield is not the explosion you hear. The most terrifying sound is the one you don't hear. Ukrainian engineering has shifted drone warfare from a continuous flight doctrine to a patient hunter doctrine. The new generation of ambush drones being developed don't just stay in the air. These devices can land on tree branches, rooftops, or power poles, just like a predatory bird. They shut down their engines, they conserve their battery, and they wait. When a Russian convoy or patrol passes by, the operator activates the system from miles away. The sleeping death awakens and strikes its target within seconds. Imagine the psychological impact of this technology on Russian soldiers. Just looking up at the sky isn't enough. Every tree branch, every bush, every ruin could potentially harbor an assassin. As you can see in this video, the drone's ability to take off and land gives it an almost unlimited operational ambush time. While the Russians are dealing with these invisible hunters, Ukraine continues its hunt in the sky with more visible, louder, and much more effective methods. This is where things get even more interesting, and the difference in technological aesthetics becomes much more apparent. When Russian reconnaissance drones like Orlan or Zala, or kamikaze drones like Shahid appear in Ukrainian skies, they are no longer met only by expensive Patriot missiles. Enter the Hellfire buggy. Ukraine is actively using the Tempest system developed by the US-based company V2X. These vehicles are modified, armored versions of 4x4 off-road vehicles like the Can-Am Maverick, with laser-guided AGM-114 Hellfire missiles mounted on them. The system is simple but destructive. The radar on the vehicle detects the Russian drone. The buggy moves to the optimal firing position at 100 kilometers per hour across the terrain. The Hellfire missile is fired, and the Russian drone is blown apart in mid-air. We're talking about a hit-and-run tactic. By the time the Russian artillery can respond, the buggy has already moved on. This system has also caught the attention of the US Marine Corps, and similar contracts are in the pipeline. Ukraine is testing and developing Western military technology in a real-world combat laboratory. But sometimes, speed isn't enough. Raw firepower is needed. Where high-tech missiles fall short, kinetic energy comes into play. Ukraine has transformed Soviet-era bulky but sturdy Antonov An-28 cargo planes into flying fortresses. M134 minigun systems, capable of firing thousands of rounds per minute, have been mounted on the side doors of these aircraft. The crew, equipped with night vision goggles and thermal cameras, most of whom are volunteers from civilian aviation, hunt down Russian Shahid drones in the dead of night. Instead of spending millions of dollars on a missile to shoot down a Shahid drone, these planes approach the drone and shred it with a hail of bullets. It's a perfect solution in terms of cost-effectiveness. According to reports by French channel TF1, these aircraft have already been equipped with more than 150 kill marks. In the skies over Ukraine, the dogfight spirit of World War II is being revived, combined with modern technology. But war is not won by high technology alone. Sometimes the simplest solution of human ingenuity can be more effective than billion-dollar weapons. Alongside all this high technology, lasers, missiles, and artificial intelligence, the practical intelligence of the soldier on the ground comes into play. Fishing nets. When Ukrainian soldiers went to the UK for training, they were shocked to see that British instructors did not use anti-drone nets. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Irwin Clark of the British Army was surprised by the Ukrainians' reaction. For the Ukrainians, it was a matter of life and death. On the front lines, every trench, every artillery battery, every shelter is covered with simple fishing nets. When a Russian FPV drone dives, its explosive warhead gets caught in these nets before reaching its target. The propellers get tangled, and the drone remains suspended in the air, rendered ineffective. The British Army has now learned this lesson and is transporting old fishing nets collected from ports to training grounds. Billion-dollar R&D budgets sometimes cannot provide the protection that a fishing net provides. So far, we have talked about how drones kill or how they are destroyed. But Ukraine is evolving drones not only to kill, but also to survive. Footage released by the Ukrainian Security Service reveals the extent of the change on the ground. Unmanned ground vehicles, UGVs, known as taxi drones, are entering areas under fire. The footage shows a wounded Russian soldier captured by SBU units being evacuated using this vehicle without putting the lives of Ukrainian personnel at risk. This is a revolutionary step in military doctrine. Under normal circumstances, an evacuation operation would endanger the lives of at least 4 soldiers. Now, only a joystick and an electric motor are doing the job. Logistics, evacuation, and supply lines are now being freed from human involvement. And technology doesn't just transport logistics. Sometimes it directly changes destiny, as in this incident that looks like something out of a Hollywood movie. The incident near Huliai Pole in the Zaporizhia region is the most striking proof of this. 2 Ukrainian soldiers were ambushed and captured by Russian infantry. Russian soldiers were taking the prisoners to their own lines, possibly to an execution or interrogation center. The command center was monitoring the situation live. Sending infantry to intervene was impossible. The distance was too great, and there was no time. The decision was made in seconds. The heavy bombardment drone, codenamed Vampire, took off. This drone is usually a monster used to destroy tanks, but this time, its mission was a surgical rescue operation. The drone operator located the Russian captors. With incredible precision, it dropped munitions targeting only the Russian soldiers. The explosion incapacitated the Russian soldiers holding the prisoners, allowing the Ukrainian soldiers to take advantage of the ensuing chaos and escape. The drone continued to provide air cover until they reached a safe zone. This event was a first in the history of warfare. A machine, without human intervention, distinguished between friend and foe, and, on its own initiative and with operator support, successfully completed a rescue operation. These events were realities of the physical world. However, while Russia's conventional mindset tried to stop the propeller in the sky, it realized too late that the real threat came from signals. Behind these metal cages and primitive defense lines, a completely different war is raging, one that is invisible to the eye, unrecorded by cameras, but whose effects are far more devastating. Ukraine has found Russia's blind spot not only in the physical world, but also in the electromagnetic spectrum. Look at the system Ukraine has quietly deployed, one that seems to intoxicate Russian missiles. Pokrova. This is not a simple jammer on the front line. It is a national-scale GPS deception network. When Russia's million-dollar Iskander missiles or Iranian-made Shahed drones lock onto their targets, Pokrova kicks in. The system doesn't just cut satellite signals, it rewrites them. While the missile's electronic brain still believes it is heading for the target, it is actually veered kilometers off course and crashes into an empty field. This is the pinnacle of the soft kill doctrine, neither expending ammunition nor firing a single missile, yet rendering the enemy's most expensive attacks ineffective. Thanks to this strategy, defined by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense as the invisible shield, Russia's precision strike capability has dramatically declined. Russian generals, reporting why the missiles are missing their targets, resort to the excuse of technical malfunction. But the truth is that Ukraine has erased Russia's navigation map and replaced it with its own fake reality. Meanwhile, the war is not only being fought in the skies and on land, the rules are also being rewritten in the depths of the Black Sea. The humiliation suffered by the Russian Navy in the dark waters of the Black Sea is one of the greatest ironies in the history of warfare. Imagine a scenario where a country without a navy traps one of the world's largest naval powers in its ports. This seemed impossible, until the Magura V-5 entered the scene. These black, sleek, and deadly sea drones brought the famous Wolfpack tactic of World War II into the autonomous age. Now it's not just one drone attacking. While one Magura V-5 draws the attention of a Russian warship, and the ship's defensive guns focus on it, the other 5 drones glide in just above the water, locking onto the ship's starboard and port sides. Massive cruisers, billion-dollar corvettes are being hunted by these plastic and explosive-laden sharks, costing $250,000 each. Sergei Kotov, Caesar Kunikov, and Ivanovets all fell victim to this new generation swarm tactic. When Russia was forced to evacuate its Black Sea fleet from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk, it was not merely a strategic retreat. It was the collapse of a 200-year-old naval doctrine. Ukraine seized control of the Black Sea without a single ship of its own, and now this swarm intelligence is taking on a new form, not just at sea, but in the air as well, because the era of propeller-driven slow drones is coming to an end. Russian air defense, however, was designed to hunt down slow-flying drones or intercept supersonic missiles. But what if an object flies in an unidentified gray area between the two? Ukraine's Palyanitsia, dubbed the rocket drone, is changing the rules of the game once again. This system combines the maneuverability of a drone with the speed of a missile. This jet-powered hybrid beast flies below the reaction time of Russia's air defense batteries. It's too fast to be shot down by machine guns like propeller-driven drones, but if hit by S-400 missiles, it's cheap enough to drive Russia into economic bankruptcy. This is the heart of our analysis: economic asymmetry. When Russia has to fire a $2 million interceptor missile to stop a $50,000 Palyanitsia, it means that even if it doesn't lose the war on the battlefield, it loses it in the treasury. When Ukraine sends this weapon to air bases, oil refineries, and military factories deep inside Russia, it leaves Moscow with a terrible dilemma. Should we waste our valuable missiles on a worthless drone, or let it get hit? Both options are a disaster scenario for Russia. However, the ultimate point of technology is neither speed nor explosive power. The ultimate point is decision-making capability. Decision-making used to be quite difficult for Ukraine. When Russia equipped the front line with electronic jammers, Ukrainian operators' screens would go blank, and the connection would be lost. This meant the drone would crash, but now, when the connection is lost, artificial intelligence kicks in. The new generation of Ukrainian drones are equipped with optical navigation systems called machine vision. Even if the operator loses connection, the chip on the drone analyzes the image from the camera. It recognizes the terrain, distinguishes a tank, a shelter, or a military formation, and locks on. They no longer need GPS. They don't need radio signals. The drone sees its target and makes a decision. This is not a science fiction movie scenario. It is the reality of autonomous hunting currently happening on the front lines. For Russian soldiers, this means escape is impossible. Your signal jamming bags and anti-drone rifles are now useless, because the machine in front of you is not listening to you, it is watching you. So for Russia, the real nightmare is not losing 6,000 drones, it's that the technology that destroyed them is now unstoppable. When we look at this whole picture from a broader perspective, the explosion in Rostov was not just the blowing up of an ammunition depot. That explosion was the clearest response to the old Soviet doctrine that quantity overcomes quality. These events provide us with a very important feasibility report. The 6,000 drones destroyed in Rostov prove that Ukraine is not just defending itself, but changing the mathematics of war. From ambush drones hidden in trees to vampire drones rescuing prisoners, from hellfire-loaded buggies to cargo planes hunting with machine guns in the sky, this is no longer the conventional warfare Russia knows. While Russia is still trying to fight with 20th century doctrines, Ukraine is writing this century's war concept on the battlefield. And in this scenario, Russian cages made of scrap metal stand no chance against an AI-powered swarm. Russia, meanwhile, is like a massive, clumsy, and blind titan. It is slowly, piece by piece, being destroyed by missiles it cannot see, naval drones it cannot hear, and autonomous swarms it cannot stop. And the most terrifying question still hangs in the air. What's next in Ukraine's technological laboratory? Time will tell if they can figure this out before Moscow is engulfed in darkness. But one thing is certain, war has changed, and those who can't keep up are doomed to vanish like those drones in Rostov. Presented by TGN. Thank you for choosing us.